Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this special live event on YouTube to celebrate the release of Colleen Isherwood's The Bomber in the Basement. I am your host today, Adrian M. Gibson, Colleen's nephew, and I'm very excited today to chat with my aunt about the book that she released and delve into her process of journalism, writing career, and all that kind of stuff, but also process of writing the book itself. And if anyone doesn't know me, I'm the author of Mushroom Blues, which is my debut novel. So two of us debuted within a year of each other, which is awesome. So
For
welcome,
sure.
Colleen. How are you?
Thank you. Just great. Thanks.
I'm very excited to chat. And just to start off, if you can introduce yourself to the folks out there watching who don't yet know you.
Okay, well, I'm Colleen Isherwood, and up until about, I guess about a recent, up until quite recently, I would describe myself as a writer, editor, and graphic designer. And now I can add author to the list because I'm
Yes,
the author of The Bomber in the Basement, which has just recently come out.
a woman of many talents. As
Thank you.
as is the norm in our family, I think, in reality.
I'm sure we'll be chatting about some other members of the family.
Yes, definitely, definitely. Well, we both pursued journalism professionally, actually. You actually went to school for journalism, and then you and your husband Steve ran magazines and did that for decades. But I only did it, I think, for about like 4 or 5 years. Dipped my toes into the world of journalism, specifically music journalism, and then realized like, this isn't really for me. But what appealed to you about that world of journalism, publishing, and all that?
I guess the thing that appeals to me most about it is that if you've got the skills to be a journalist, you can write about just about anything. So, and I've written about everything from, well, Ecolog Week, which is sort of the model for one of the things that one of the newsletters in the book, to dogs in Canada and Walmart pets. To I've actually got one here that I wrote for to beer connoisseur. So that was fun. so so and standards and you can write about anything if because often your audience needs to have something explained to them, and if
Hmm.
you learn about it and you interview someone and you can explain it, then it's a very interesting process.
Yeah, I agree. But how was it for you to step out of that after so many years? When you and Steve decided like, yeah, we're not going to do this anymore. We're officially going to retire and leaving so much behind, you know?
Well, I was ready. I don't think Steve was totally ready.
He's
So,
still
but
not
I,
ready.
but I, yeah, but I sort of figured I didn't want to become one of those people who hung around too long and became a dinosaur.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
wanted to go out while we were still, you know, alive and well and producing and writing. So,
Hmm.
so I have had no trouble adjusting to retirement. So I've been able to pursue book writing for one thing,
Yeah.
and lots of time to do what I want to do.
Yeah, that's great. But how do you sustain passion over such a long period of time? It's like, 40 years.
45,
Yeah, 40,
45.
45 years. Sustaining that passion for something over such a long period of time is like, how the hell do you do it? Because I've switched careers, I think like 3 times at this point.
Well, okay, so it's not just one thing. It's not just, you're writing news releases all day long, or you're writing book brochures all day long, or you're editing a newspaper all day long. Uh, in my career, I've managed to do not only various subjects, but also various types of journalism. So everything from um, writing a newsletter on the hospitality industry, a newspaper, sorry, on the hospitality industry for many,
Mm.
many years, to writing speeches. So it just and it just sort of there's enough variety that kept me interested. I probably could have earned more money by going into management or, becoming a group publisher or something like
Right.
this, but I like hands-on writing.
I mean, the variety thing is definitely key
Oh,
to
yes.
sustaining passion, sustaining
Mhm.
interest because it's constantly changing.
Mhm.
But I think as a writer, it's like you like to experiment with different avenues of creative expression. And, you were during all those years kind of dipping your toes into the fiction pool as well. So can you tell me a bit more about that?
Okay. Well, that wasn't as much of a thing as I would have thought it would be. I have started novels and not finished them. And at various times in my career, I would sort of have I would take Fridays off so that I could do my writing. And but I never really published anything, any other novels. This is the first one. So,
Well, I'm glad you finally finished.
oh yes, it
We'll have
only
plenty
took
to talk about then.
71 years. It
Yeah,
took
yeah.
actually from start to finish. Bomber in the Basement took 9 years. So if I do the math, and 9 years per book, I've got another few to be turned before I turn 100. So
Hopefully it speeds up before then.
I think, yeah, hopefully it'll speed up. Yes.
Yeah. We're just gonna say hello. We got Yvonne Kaysen in the chat
Yes, yes.
from
Yvonne's been a
Bonita
friend.
Springs, Florida. We've got Patrine. Hello, Patrine. How you doing?
Hey, hey.
She's here watching. Thank you everyone else for being here as well. If you got questions for Colleen, you can feel free to throw them in the chat, and we'll have a little Q&A at the end as well. But I wanted to ask you a bit more about your experiments with writing fiction Fridays, failed fiction
Fiction
Fridays.
Friday. Yeah.
But what about it was more challenging than you had, initially imagined? And how did writing fiction kind of compare to writing nonfiction, but like journalistic nonfiction is more your bread and butter?
Well, I've already talked about how much I liked, writing the journalism stuff. So
Mhm.
and but when it came to fiction, I was frustrated as a young author because I felt I hadn't lived enough.
Mhm.
So I didn't really have anything to write about that would be new and exciting and wonderful. And ironically, when I was feeling that way, it was the time just before I met the model for A Bomber in the Basement. The story was inspired by a true story.
Mhm.
So, and yes, I didn't think I had enough to write about, and then I'd get discouraged. But finally, got one that stuck.
Yeah, I think the discouragement thing is a huge factor, because like so many authors that I've spoken with over the years, the amount of novels that they've started, never finished, the trunk novels as they like to call them, just so many unfinished stories, or ones that they do finish and they realize like, oh wow, this is absolute crap, and I cannot put this out into the world. So I think it takes a lot of experimentation to get to a point where you feel like you've lived enough, you feel like you have a story worth telling, and the confidence to finish it first of all, and then on top of that the confidence to put it out into the world. And with The Bomber in the Basement, I think it was really really sweet. Like at the beginning you dedicated it to your dad, my granddad. So let's talk about TC a little bit and how he inspired you in general, but also in terms of writing.
Okay, well, TC, my father and Adrian's grandfather, was someone who always wanted to be a writer. When he was in high school, he was editor of the school yearbook. His English teacher, Miss Tilden, said that he should go on and he should become a journalist or a writer and put his talents to use. But that was in 1947. In 1947, my grandparents didn't think that that was a good career. You should be an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer. And
Honestly, like I'm
he,
just going to interject, like the 1950s and 60s and 70s was probably the best time to be a writer, because
I,
you
oh,
could actually make a living off of it,
yeah,
selling short stories or writing for
yes,
magazines and stuff.
yes, yeah, that's for sure. Anyway, so back to TC though. So my dad always wanted to be a writer, but he became an engineer and a very good engineer, and an engineer who knew how to write, um, how to write specifications that people would read that didn't have spelling errors that were, to the point. I'm sure it helped him in his engineering business, the fact that he could write so well. So, but when he retired, he did some other things. He did some gardening. He got his master gardeners. But at age 80, he was slowing down. He had a progressive disease called Charcot-Marie Tooth, where it made him gradually more and more physically disabled. But mentally, he was just fine. And he wrote, between the ages of 80 and 92, he wrote 17 books. So he was very happy to tell me, who'd been writing all my life, that he could join the writers union and I was not eligible. So
Just to shove it in your face. Come on, man.
yeah, 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 yeah. So, and I actually with Bomber, yeah, we talked sometimes about story ideas, and I talked about this story idea, based on a person that I knew quite when I was, quite young. And he said, "Well, if you're not going to write that story, then I'm going to write it." So that was about 2016, and that's when I said, "Okay, I don't want him writing it. I'm going to write this story. That's my story." So I started doing that.
I love
So
that
and then right,
competitive kind of relationship that you two had.
oh yeah, oh yeah, and it would even get down to, at one point I'd have put my Friday in, and I'd count the word, to get the word count in my Word document, and I, text my dad, or not text, email my dad and say, I did 750 words today. How many did you do? And so we were competitive, but it certainly spurred me on. And he was one of luckily, and at one point he said, you better finish this novel before I croak. So true TC style. So anyway, I did finish it. And he did read an early draft and he did like it. So I'm really glad that that was able to happen.
Yeah. I'm sure he would be very proud of you then. It's
And
now
I'm
in the
sure
world and
he's
published.
looking down. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I want to dig deeper into your creative relationship with him because, like, the fact that you were workshopping ideas with him, and
Mhm,
from the sounds of
mhm.
it, it's like yes, it is competitive, but it's kind of like a competition based in collaboration and wanting to help each other out and motivate each other. Do you want
And
to
love.
kind of elaborate about that? And love, of course. Yes.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Well, I guess what I was able to do is he would get me to proofread some of his books. So, and so I was able to help out that way. Um, and I guess there's things I'd picked up as an author that helped him. I was able to say, ditch that scene, or, uh, you know,
I remember you telling me a story about a certain romantic scene that you told him to.
oh no, no, no. My dad was a good writer, but the sex scenes were not his forte. So
It's just like cut to black. You can leave it at that. It's okay.
exactly, exactly. Yes. They just suggest. There's
Hmm.
great, great, great power in the power of suggestion. So anyway, but on the other hand, what he would do is he kept encouraging me. He kept saying, you got to write your novel, you've got to work on it. And finally, during COVID, which I hated, other than, the one fact that was good about COVID is I was retired by then, and I was able to finish my book
Hmm.
and have the time to do it and no other distractions, which was helpful. So, but I dedicated the book to Dad, for a very good reason. He was the impetus, behind my writing fiction.
Hmm. Yeah, it's beautiful. And let's talk more about Bomber in the Basement. I think COVID spurred a lot of people on to write their books or finally like finish their books because I know a lot of authors who's like, yeah, I started writing in 2020 when everything was going to shit. I decided, yeah, that was probably a good thing to put my mind towards to keep it off of the chaos of the world.
Right,
Um,
right.
but the publishing journey of Bomber in the Basement, we're here today, and the book has been out for I think about a little over a week,
13 days? No, not even that many.
like
About a
eight
week.
days, I
About
think.
a
Yeah.
week. Yeah.
Why do you feel that this was the novel that you finished and felt confident enough to carry forward with, and especially to like query an agent? And you did eventually get an agent, but tell me about that whole process.
Okay. So I wrote the book and I got a few readers. One of them was my dad. So, and I had some other, fellow journalists and friends and family read it. And I got some feedback from them. My dad said, it doesn't need any work, which was not
Hmm.
true. But I don't think he was being nice. I think he genuinely thought I'd done a pretty good job.
Hmm.
So next step. Okay, I've heard so much awful stuff about traditional publishing, how it's, that only one book in 75,000 or something gets published, and how it's so hard, you don't bother sending in a manuscript unsolicited because it will just sit in the slush pile. that you have to know somebody or have a contact or, find a way to get somebody's attention. So I went through all my LinkedIn contacts and sort of tried to, see if there were any book publishers in there.
Hmm.
Absolutely no overlap at all. So then I got a list of the agents. I heard, good idea to get an agent. So I got a list of agents and I looked through it, did not see many familiar names except for one that stood out. My mother used to work for Collins Publishers selling books in the late 60s and early
And that's
70s.
before it became HarperCollins.
That's right. That's right. And she worked with a
Crazy.
guy named Morty Mint. And you do not forget a name like Morty Mint.
It's a
So
great name. That is an
it's
agent
a
name if I've
wonderful
ever heard
name.
one.
Yeah, and he was an agent. I think he's now retired because when I got in touch with him, yes, he remembered my mother, and yes, he would like to help me, but he wasn't working as an agent anymore. He'd
Hmm.
retired. But what he did was really helpful. He gave me the email and private telephone number for Iris Tupholme, who's the chief editor at HarperCollins. So I called Iris. I said, Morty said to call, and she took my call and she said, send the book in. I'll give it to one of my editors. So I got heard back from the editor. I heard back from Iris,
Hmm.
and it was about a month later, so not too long. And in the world of book publishing,
Yeah.
so
That
yeah,
is
in the
very that
world,
is very fast in
that's
the
a
world of book
good,
publishing.
yes, 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 yes. And she basically said, but as a typical line I hear, it's not what we're looking for in our spring lineup.
Hmm.
So and she said she said that the editor had a couple of comments. There were some places where I could have cut it where two characters were saying the same thing and it didn't really work. And so I dug a little deeper and got a lot more comments from this particular editor. And while they didn't publish the book, they did set me on a journey of being able to rewrite and make it more readable. And
Hmm.
then my husband came up with the idea that it needed an epilogue. And after you've read the book, you'll know, after people read the book, they'll know, yes, indeed, it needed the epilogue. So then after that, I got in touch with a friend of mine, Jerry Amranick. And Jerry has had 7 books published, some of them by traditional publishers, and some of them he's published himself. But he'd worked through an agent named an agency called Acacia Publishing, and he put me in touch with them. And Kathy Olensky, one of their agents, really liked the book, so she said that she'd take it to different publishers. And she did. It took about 2 years. And she went to all kinds of different publishers. But in Canada, the market is not necessarily very well. They have topics of the day that they're interested in. Like, for example, anything that's written by Indigenous writers gets more attention. Anything that deals with LGBTQ2S,
Hmm.
it gets
Historical
more,
fiction as well, I think, is like a bigger thing in Canada.
yeah, yeah. So, but mostly Indigenous historical fiction
Hmm.
and murder mysteries. Well, there's a market for those too. So, but so Kathy sent the book around to a number of publishers, didn't get any bites, and so after 2 years, I said, well, it's time to look at indie publishing.
Yeah.
And I contacted my nephew Adrian, who helped me through it. So we're
I like did all the I did a test run basically with my book last year.
you did,
Um,
yes. Hmm.
and it's like uh, it seems daunting at first, but once you kind of get the basic framework down, like I doubt I would have to help you to self-publish your next book.
Well, except for
Um,
doing the layout and design.
yeah. But like
So
I'm talking about like actual like submitting your book and all that kind of stuff. It's like
right,
once you figure it out, once you do it once, then things become a little bit more clear. And you're like, oh, this isn't actually that bad in comparison
right.
to what it
Mhm.
seems like to be like, I'm going to publish a book. I just want to throw Mr. Cool's comment. I have no idea who Mr. Cool
Oh,
is,
okay.
but the book is the kind of story where heroes are forged. Trust is shattered and the stakes couldn't be higher. Are you ready to plunge into the excitement? I have, so
Oh,
check it out.
Wow.
Mr.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Cool. Mr.
Thank you,
Cool
Mr.
is
Cool.
yeah, Mr. Cool is pitching the book, so go buy The Bomber in the Basement as soon as we're done chatting here. But I wanted to get your take on self-publishing because like my journey, I basically went through a couple of years of podcasting and learning from different authors, and all of that convinced me that I didn't want to go into traditional publishing.
Mhm.
Before I'd done that, I was all about like I want to get an agent, I want to get published by X, Y, and Z publisher, et cetera, et cetera. And I didn't even go through any of that process because podcasting completely dissuaded me of that path. And made me realize like self-publishing is what works for me because that fits my personality, it fits my business style, my business approach, the more like entrepreneurial sort of way of tackling things. And for you as like a business owner for such a long time, as someone who's managed a company and has been an entrepreneur, you know, you tried the trad route, but then you decided to go indie instead because it's like it's been 2 years. This is too long. What was that decision like for you, and what are your thoughts on the various publishing paths and the more entrepreneurial side of self-publishing?
Well, I think that your book was an inspiration for me to do it because I saw that you were having success with it
Hmm.
and having fun with it too.
Yeah,
So, and
growing mushrooms from my book.
yes, yes, I'm trying to figure out what that's got to do with the bomber in
You
the
need to
basement so I
like
can
yeah,
copy you. So,
yeah, like blow up
and
your book in a legal way somehow.
great idea.
Yeah.
On the 4th of July, yes, okay.
There you go. Get some M80s and just go to town.
There you go. Yeah. Anyway, I think the original question was, what did I think about self-publishing? And
Mm,
I guess I looked at my dad's experience. He self-published all of his books, and he did very well with the first few because he was well enough to market them. So
mhm.
he had book launches and he spoke at Probus clubs and he actually came down to Toronto and from Collingwood and had a book launch, which was really kind of exciting. I had all my friends there to buy his book and
Mhm.
ask him questions. So, but I wasn't sure it was for me because, consequently, after that, when Dad couldn't market his books, they went nowhere, like in terms of other than friends and family. So anyway, I was encouraged by your experience, and I was ready after 2 years of waiting, with my really lovely agent who did such a good, gave it such a good try for me that I was ready. I was ready to try it. So,
Yeah.
and
And
the experience,
just a quick aside, Alex is ready to make the the bombing of the bomber in the
oh, there
basement
you go.
happen.
Okay.
We'll figure this out somehow.
That sounds wonderful. Okay.
Completely legal within Toronto's legal standards.
Right, right, right.
But continue, Colleen.
Okay, I think I'm done. Once I got into it, you certainly helped me a lot get through the
Hmm.
process, and mainly well, a lot of it was the cover.
Hmm.
So and so what I tell for the audience, what I did is I've done graphic design, I've done magazines, I've done newspapers. So I thought I would do a book cover and send it to Adrian for his comments. He was very polite. He said, "Do you mind if I take a crack at this?"
You have no
So,
idea how many friends of mine I've done that for. I'll just be like,
oh my goodness. That was,
my inner artist is just like, yeah, let me do this for you.
I think so. I think so. And then he said, he came up with this absolutely amazing cover. You see it in the background, and this is what it looks like right here. And then after I got this amazing cover within, it was less than a day. I think it was hours that you came up with this absolutely wonderful cover and showed it around to everybody, and everybody's going, ooh, ah. So, and then very shortly after that, you said, how about if I did your layout too? They've got very strict things that they ask for well, for Kindle Direct Publishing which is what we used. And
Yep.
so you did the layout, and again, I thought, well, I've done layout. I know fonts. I could do this, but no, I was very good to have someone who'd been through the process and been through. Kindle Direct has very very strict parameters as to what
Yeah.
works for them and what doesn't. So, and
If you
you
have
can
if
see
you have
that.
like an F or a J that's hanging over the basically like the boundaries of
Uh,
their what is it called, like the gutter kind of thing,
yeah.
which is the middle of the book where the pages curve together. It's like if that F is hanging a little too far, then it's basically like
Oh,
150 errors that
yes,
their
yes.
program
Every
catches. And like,
time you
oh
had an
shit.
F.
Yeah, like every F and every J, it's like, oh, this is horrible.
Right,
But
right.
yeah, no, I was happy to help because I knew the ropes. It's like I've been through all this before, and basically like I can I've been formatting my upcoming books, and a lot of it is just like I'm just gonna duplicate the one that I did for Mushroom Blues and like change certain things around, like stylistically and whatnot. But I know that I can sort of use that template going forward, to create books that I know Amazon won't be like, okay, I'm gonna flag you for
Right,
a
right.
hundred different things. I know it's like if I hit submit, then this is gonna be more or less good.
Well, when we actually got to that point of the process where they, look at your books and see if they're acceptable
Nobody actually
for
looks at it. It's actually AI, which is
oh, well, the AI
probably a decent application of AI, I think.
the AI decided that our book was just fine in all of the different
Perfect.
formats, so it worked out great. So,
Wonderful. Well, what advice would you give to anyone out there who's unsure about which publishing path they would like to take?
hmm, I would say try try traditional publishing if you want to. But that, there's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts. There's lots of things that could prevent you from actually publishing your book.
Hmm.
With the self-publishing, it's going to be published. You'll get there. You'll get it out to the public, out on Amazon. They'll print as many books as you need. You're not doling out a whole bunch of money to get books and then ending up not selling them all. So it works out. I'd say that I'm happy with my indie publishing route, but I wouldn't discount the other route. If you want to go try it and you think if you have a
Hmm.
contact or if you have a subject that they're looking at, then go for it.
Yeah. And you can go hybrid at some point. If the occasion arises, the opportunity arises, you can be self-published and traditionally published at the same time.
Okay, okay, yeah, because
Um,
do you hear, is that what, like when you hear about somebody's self-published book that was very successful and then a traditional publisher wants to pick it up? Is that what you're talking
Not even
about? Or
necessarily just that, like
no,
traditionally
no.
published authors who also self-publish, like they do both.
Okay, yeah, that
Um,
okay. My
or
friend
like a lot
Jerry,
of, yeah, or a lot of, yeah, Jerry's a good example of a hybrid author.
and my friend Yvonne too, who's on the
Mm,
call. So,
yeah, or people who, um, I think this is more in like maybe fantasy science fiction space where there's a lot of series and a lot of readers investing long term in that kind of thing.
hmm.
So one author would say traditionally publish all of their main books, but then they would self-publish side stories like novellas and shorter things like that.
Okay, okay,
So there's a
yeah.
lot of really, really cool opportunities in that sense. And I've seen a
Hmm.
lot of authors take advantage of it. Actually, Yvonne's got a question.
Oh, what's that?
What is your favorite thing about publishing your first book, which feeds into what I wanted to ask you about how you feel now that Bomber's finally out in the world?
I'm just lapping it up. I'm just enjoying myself immensely. So I've already had one book club meeting, and they're my buddies, right? So they all
Yeah.
gathered around with a Jamocha almond fudge cake, which was absolutely lovely, and some beautiful flowers. And they all said they liked the book. I think they did. I think they really liked it. But so that was the first one, and then tonight, and then on Sunday we're having an in-person launch. So far we have
Nice.
63 people coming, so it should be fun.
Fantastic. Fantastic. What were some of the biggest challenges you think getting to this point?
Mm, the discipline. So to stick to it, to stick to it, to sit in that chair. I remember being in a writing workshop once where they said to put Velcro. We pretended, no, pretend crazy glue on the chair. And then somebody modified it and says, that's a little cruel. How about Velcro? But to
Yeah, yeah.
stay in that chair to actually, have the discipline of writing for, however much time you've allotted, and to stick to doing that every week or every
Hmm.
day or whatever you've decided you're going to do.
Regardless of how crappy a
Yes, how
particular writing
crappy
session
you
turns
feel.
out.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Exactly.
yeah. Yeah, my friend MJ, she's one of the co-hosts on my podcast. She says like ass in seat is like her rule of thumb. It's like get your ass in that chair, because if you get past that hurdle, um I think there's a lot that you can accomplish once your ass is in the chair. And even if it just ends up being like, yeah, I'm just jotting ideas down bullet point, it's like that's still something.
Hmm, hmm,
Progress is
hmm.
progress no matter how small.
And it does help when you're in touch with your dad at the end of the day, and he wants to know how many words you've
Yeah.
done. So that was so, but that's the hardest part, I think, is the discipline and not being
Hmm.
sidetracked and actually making this your goal and sticking to it.
Yeah,
So,
I completely agree. Because yeah, the people who publish books are the ones who actually finished it,
you're right.
and you know, and then the discipline of like polishing it up and going through the whole process and whatnot. Yeah, it's discipline from top to bottom, I think,
Hmm.
and not just for one
Absolutely.
book. Now it's like both of us were like, well, we got to write another book, so I have to
Hmm.
discipline myself all over again. And even some lessons that you learn from the first book, you're just like psychologically just pushing it out of your mind. You
Right,
know,
right, right. Hmm.
the stubborn human beings that we are.
Right, right, right. Hmm.
All right, well, getting into the actual meat of this story, I want to ask you where the idea for the bomber in the basement came from. Yvonne also asked a question earlier in that regard,
Okay.
about
Hmm.
your inspiration for the book.
Okay, I actually knew the bomber in the basement, so it's inspired by. I won't say based on,
Hmm.
because there's a lot of writing. What do you call it? Poetic license that I've
Yeah.
that I've taken. Um, when I was just out of journalism school, in fact, I just graduated. I was working at a public publishing company named Corpus Publishers. And Corpus Publishers is sort of like Eco in the book. So we published newsletters, and the newsletters had to be current, which in the 1970s meant they had to go into the mail, and
Hmm.
they'd be delivered a day or two later. So to speed up the process, we had our own printer in the office. We're probably the only printer in Rosedale in downtown Toronto that ever existed. But we had this big behemoth that was hard to run, and we'd been through a few people who hadn't gotten along with this printer. We finally found a guy that could run it. His name was Gary Mitchell, and he was a couple of years older than me. He was kind of a hippie. He had, longish hair, and not, wasn't a real fashionable dresser or anything. Just a laid back guy who liked science fiction, and who liked to have like long discussions about the true meaning of life, and things like that. So we all liked him a lot, and then one day, Gary Mitchell said that he was going to be moving out west. We all said, okay, well, he seems to imply that he came from out west, so it makes sense
Hmm.
he's moving back. But we did true Corpus Publisher style. We had a pizza lunch, and we had a present for Gary to say goodbye. It was a science fiction book. I was the one who picked it out.
Which
We
one? Do you
all
remember the book?
No, I don't. It was an anthology of
Oh,
science
okay.
fiction stories. So, and anyway, so by Gary, the next day, the police were at Corpus Publishers. They had arrested Gary Mitchell, whose name was not Gary Mitchell, it was Dwight Armstrong. And they'd arrested him as one of the most 10 most wanted um, people in the United States for doing an absolutely enormous car bomb at the University of Wisconsin. Sorry, yeah, University of Wisconsin Army Math Research Center. It was the biggest car bomb until the Unabomber came along. So this
Hmm.
was, and so that
That's
was
crazy.
that was Gary. And looking at his background, he didn't have a horrible childhood. It sounded like he had like a reasonable family life. He went to Boy Scouts. I couldn't rationalize the two things.
Hmm.
And so I ended up with a lot of poetic license. I ended up writing about Gary's story set in California instead of Madison, Wisconsin. So,
Hmm.
and
But
Toronto,
still,
of course.
yeah, but still in Toronto. But it's
Still
kind
in
of crazy.
Toronto.
Like, yeah, like you, I mean, obviously with this personal experience, but also you transitioning into adulthood during the Vietnam War.
Mm-hmm,
And that
mm-hmm.
just kind of being like, I guess just being in North America, it was like a present thing. Even in Canada, even though I'm sure Canada had involvement to some degree in association with the United States, but it wasn't necessarily like a Canadian-led war, let's say.
No, it wasn't at
Um,
all. So
but what at that time, what was your perception of the war? And as a Canadian, like, were you aware of people like draft dodgers or kind of like an anti-war movement?
well, most of the time that the war was on, I was in high school. And as a high school student, I was pretty sheltered. I didn't live downtown. I lived in Etobicoke. So
Hmm.
it's not Markland Woods, but not too far from there. So, and my exposure to the war was through Time magazine and Life magazine. My parents got both. Life was particularly, it affected me the most because they had award-winning photography, that
Hmm.
captured some of the violence and some of the, um, some of the very gory scenes of the war. So that was what my exposure was as a teenager in high school. Once I got to Carleton University, there were people. It was still very much in the background. I did know a draft dodger. One of my friends from Corpus was dating a fellow and eventually married him.
Hmm.
Um, but and I guess I thought a lot about, what if I were, what if we lived in the States? Would my brothers be going to war? But it was all pretty theoretical.
Yeah.
So not I wasn't like in protesting or anything else.
Hmm.
And there were definitely a lot of draft dodgers coming to Toronto, and I think Montreal was another place. So
Yeah, because I
anyway,
could imagine a lot coming through like Michigan and through like New York
New
State
York
and
State,
places like
right,
that.
right. Hmm.
But in hindsight, how do you think like putting yourself in um, Gary Dwight's head, not
Yep,
Gary,
yep, yep.
in Dwight's head, how do you how did you kind of rationalize it after the fact, knowing like this is the person that he was, these are the things that
Hmm.
he did, um, and now in hindsight, being able to kind of like put yourself in his shoes and think, what would lead someone who is like in the Boy Scouts to go down this path, to do something so
Hmm.
radical as bombing a research center at a university?
Hmm. Hmm. Um, I actually enjoyed writing Gary, Dwight, Scotty, Barry. That character, I enjoyed writing that character because it challenged me to find like what would lead somebody that had had a perfectly normal childhood and wasn't, looking at all kind, wasn't,
Mm-hmm.
what would lead them, and I came up with the ideas in the book, and I'm not going to spoil it by saying why, but I,
Go
I
pick it
had
up
no
and
idea. I
find
have
out.
no idea why Dwight and his brother was involved, but he's nothing like Alan. And there
Mm-hmm.
were two other people involved, and I even have a book about them.
Like a
The
nonfiction book about
Madison,
them.
yeah, the Madison bombing, done by a
Wow.
journalist who even went to Corpus and interviewed my boss and the woman who's Moira in the story.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So
so.
cool. Because it is kind of like a crazy thing to have to inhabit a character's mind. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So what are some of your steps when it comes to like trying to better? Um, it is kind of a crazy thing because it's like people do really messed up shit, and especially in fiction, it's like a
Mhm.
lot of
Mhm.
characters do terrible things,
Right,
but as
right.
authors, it's like you have to kind of inhabit their minds and come up with justifications from their perspectives as to like why they're doing a particular thing. So how do you go about that when it comes to your characters?
Hmm. I guess just what if and why and what were some of the things that were happening around then. So and I guess I've seen enough movies and read enough books about the Vietnam War to know how much it damaged people, and that comes across in the novel as well. So, but it was fun. With Katie, it was very easy because she's a caricature of me. She's not
Hmm.
me at all, but she's a caricature. So a very extreme me. So
Yeah. You're able
and
to
but
infuse a lot more of yourself into the character like that.
yes. And that was easy. And the Toronto stuff was really fun.
Hmm.
So because I lived through lived through those times in Toronto, and because because I was just starting my career, and it was at the age that I was, it sticks in my mind. So,
Yeah. And well, speaking of Katie, I want to ask you about the dual point of view structure that you used for the novel. So you've got the character Barry, based on Dwight, and then you've got
mhm.
Katie, based on Moira's. Is that her name?
No, let's see, Katie, no, Katie's sort of like me.
Okay.
So I
So
got a
Katie,
lot of me
Katie,
in
yeah.
it, but not all the same. Some of it's from some of my friends and people I've come in contact with over the
Mhm.
years. But okay, so the dual character structure that I know it's limiting to some authors, but for me it freed me to really get inside the brains of the people I was talking about. So I wasn't saying Barry did this, Barry did that, Barry thought this, Barry said
Mhm.
this. I was just I did this, I did this, I said this, I did. I just found it a lot more authentic. I could get the voices a bit better.
Mhm.
So, and same with Katie, so to have the two of them alternating. So, and some flashbacks and things as well.
Yeah, and you're able to use those two perspectives to um, highlight things that one character sees about the other character or perceives about the other character. I think is a really useful
Right,
tactic as well.
right. And I just found that it worked. I tried writing it in third person, what do you call it? Omnipotent narrator,
Hmm.
but it didn't
That's
really
the
work. It
and
didn't work.
that's a very old school narrative style too. That not a lot of people. I don't read many books nowadays that use an
The third
like an
person,
yeah
an
like
omnipotent neighbor.
omniscient I think is the one that you're thinking
Oh,
of.
okay. They
Um,
know yeah, that's right. They know everything and
mhm.
they see everything. So
Yeah,
yeah. Mhm.
exactly. And
Right.
so from your perspective, why was this story, The Bomber, why was it important for the narrative to be told from those two perspectives? And how did you kind of approach introducing these two characters, kind of giving them like their ideal introductions?
Mhm. Okay. Well, with the introductions, I started them quite differently. Like with Scotty, it starts when he's a little kid, and some of the patterns that are formed when he was little.
Hmm.
Um, with Katie, the story starts, later in her. It doesn't talk about her growing up as a little girl. It talks more about her, about her experience since she got married. Um, so what was the other part of the question?
Why did you choose to introduce them in that way?
Hmm. Um, well, with Scotty, I wanted to Scotty slash Barry. I wanted to, to start. There's a pattern that emerged with the people that he did the bombing with, and I guess that's why I wanted to start there. With Katie, it was mostly the story basically focuses her on her um, after she's, after she and Barry have met each other.
Hmm.
So it didn't seem too relevant to be, I put some of her background in it, but I didn't start when she was a little kid. So, it was very useful with the two characters to have, to have them see each other. Like for Barry to sort of look at this. Whoops! Oh, excuse me. Okay, all right. I've got my husband in the room and he's watching it too. So and he just fell off a chair. So but
You
he's
okay,
gonna get
Steve?
back up. Okay. Okay. Well there's the secret out. So Anyway, okay, so back to the characters that they could say things about each other, like, my
Hmm.
landlady's kind of ditzy, or I don't think my parents would have liked him, or they describe each other, and that format that of writing a book works so for
Hmm.
this particular story.
Yeah, to give a little bit more perspective, and I think also to humanize um, every character, because especially someone like Barry, and what you experienced is like your interactions with Dwight when he was on the run and under a different pseudonym.
Right, right.
He, it's like you have this perception of him, and he feels very human and very real, very
Hmm.
easy to empathize with him. It's like here's this guy who likes science fiction and likes to talk about the meaning of life and stuff like that. But then you find out like,
He
oh
did
my
something
God,
pretty awful.
he
And,
did
and
something really
somebody did
awful. Yeah.
die. Somebody
Hmm.
died. And
Yeah.
so
And
in that
so,
bombing, they weren't supposed to, but they did. And
yeah.
so,
And so I think you did a really good job in the book of using both perspectives to give a lot of nuance and empathy to a character that has done something awful. But you can kind of over the course of the book and understanding his actions, you can not necessarily say like it's okay that he did that, but you can justify within reason and within the realm of this story. So I think you did a really good job of that. And I
well,
think
thank you. Thank you.
having Katie was very important to giving him more humanity and being able to empathize with him more.
Hmm. Thank,
Yeah.
thank you. Hmm.
And you were earlier you mentioned Toronto and your uh, just your love of Toronto, your familiarity with Toronto. So I want to talk about research for a little bit. How did you draw
Oh,
upon your background and your experience in journalism to approach
mhm.
the research process? And in the case of setting, I think it is really helpful. I'm in the realm of like creating my own settings so I can come up with whatever the hell I want. But being like, okay, we're going to be in Toronto in this era. How did you approach research and how did you utilize your journalism background to do
Well,
that?
the journalism background definitely helped.
Hmm.
So, and the internet is such a treasure trove. It's you can go down a rabbit hole too, but so much of what I wanted to find out was right there. Like what were some of the things that happened in the Vietnam War? Who were some of the players? What were the newspapers saying at the time? What happened in Haight Ashbury in the 60s? So that the research was fun for that part. And for the Toronto part, it was more a case of I remember we used to have this really trendy place where you could get your hair cut, and they did all kinds of really fancy cuts, and everybody went there. Look it up online. House of Lords. That's what the name was.
Hmm.
So it was more a case of minding my own memory and then looking things up to find out, make sure I got the details right.
Yeah, and it's
So.
crazy. Like you can find so many specifics, and for a city like Toronto, where it's like most cities in Canada, you can search up like the city archives online because they've
Mhm.
digitized all of them. So it's like you can even find newspaper clippings. You can find like man, I remember like I'm sure you knew because I was in like the very tail end of this, but like
Mhm.
going to the
Mhm.
library and having to like look at microfiche and stuff like that. And
Oh,
it's
ouch.
like
Yes,
it's
yes.
so exhausting and so time consuming. But because they've digitized all of that, it's like you can find all of those records online. You can, find very specific information, very specific news stories, photos, and all this different kind of stuff. It's I think it's probably like the best time to be a researcher.
I think so. I think so. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, and it's what a pleasure, that I could actually research stuff during COVID when we're supposed to be in the
Hmm.
house all the time. So it
Yeah.
worked out well. Hmm.
What were some of the more fascinating things that you came across during your research?
Oh boy. I don't know. I had a lot. Hmm. That's a tough question. I had some fun with it, like getting this book, this Madison Bomber book. I had to get it from South Africa. It's a rare book. It's
Well, you had
not.
to order it from South Africa.
Yes, excuse me. I had to
Wow.
order it from South Africa at a place called Last Chance Books. And the guy that I was dealing with by coincidence was named Scotty. So,
Perfect.
so Scotty from Last Chance Book got me this book. It cost about $160 by the time we, managed to get it to Toronto, and I managed to pay him in South African rand or whatever it was. So it was a hassle getting it, but that was kind of fun, and I had great conversations with Scotty along the way. So some of the stats were interesting. Um, some of the the background about Hate Ashbury, and the bands that were playing at this in the Summer of Love. Some of that was really fascinating too. And even looking, I wanted to describe something that the house in Haight Ashbury,
Hmm.
and I found Janis Joplin's living room online. So complete with with the things that I described in the house in Haight Ashbury. So
That's
lots of
amazing.
fun doing research for sure.
Super cool. And you've been to San Francisco in person as well. So it's like,
Oh, I have.
like, I think San Francisco and Toronto are kind of like very interesting cities to compare.
That's
Um,
yeah. Mhm.
like from a Canadian perspective, I think America, we kind of view America in this very, I think, fabricated way through the
Mhm,
lens
mhm.
of television and movies and stuff like that. And so it's like I remember before I went to San Francisco, and then when I went for the first time, it was like
It's just this.
imagining like this idealized version of a city, and then actually going there and being like, oh, okay. Like it's just like there's so many aspects of it that feel really familiar just because it is a North American city.
Mhm,
um
mhm.
and in comparison to somewhere like Toronto, it's like, yeah, there's like so much of the same stuff. Obviously you don't have something as iconic. I mean,
We don't have.
the CN Tower is as iconic as the Golden Gate Bridge. um but I think it comes down to like the nuance of capturing the sort of cultural milieu of that city in that particular time.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm,
and Haight
mhm.
Ashbury in the '60s sounds like an incredible time to be
Yeah,
in San Francisco.
we actually have friends that live in Alameda, which is
Hmm.
one of the settings in the book, and we were able to tour around with them in Berkeley too. We actually saw
Nice.
where where all the troubles were, and it was just this park that looked very ordinary, but it was the scene of a lot of violence.
Yeah,
So
it's like
mhm,
history can mask things very well.
that's for
It can make like the iconic become ordinary, no problem.
mhm, mhm.
All
Yeah.
right, Colleen. Well, winding down, I wanted to ask if you have any final advice to impart on the writers out there. Just things that you've learned along the way, whether it's to do with writing or publishing or what have you.
Well, if you love to write, stick to it. And if you want to do a novel, it takes a lot of discipline, but it's rewarding. That's for sure. So,
Yeah, I completely agree. And an author that I interviewed recently gave me some very good advice, and he just said, "Give yourself permission to suck." Uh, because nothing that you tackle at first will be successful. It's like you have to give yourself permission to suck because you will suck at the beginning, and then you start to find your way and hone your craft, whether it's, writing or making music or painting or whatever it is. You got to
mhm,
give yourself
mhm.
permission to suck at the beginning. Um,
That sounds good.
you know. And Colleen, what's next for you in your writing? We've hinted at the difficulty of writing a book, but how are you feeling now that this book is out and looking forward to whatever's coming next?
Well, I'm having a wonderful time, with this book, finally being in print. So after all these years, and I have ideas for a second book. I've had some false starts for a second book. We'll see if it comes to pass. So, but it's been a very rewarding experience.
And it's been very rewarding for me to be able to help you out along the way, pass along whatever knowledge I have about self-publishing and what have you. And yeah, just want to say I'm very proud of you that you finally got this book out there.
Well,
We've got multiple published authors in our family, which is really cool.
we do. We do. That's for sure. Oh, I'm looking at all these notes here. Oh my goodness. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Lori. And Spiritual
It's Yvonne.
Awakenings International.
That's Yvonne. I know
Okay.
that's Yvonne. Yeah.
No, Yvonne was
So Alex.
Spirit Blesses. But
Hmm.
all right. Well, thank you everyone so much for watching. Colleen, this has been absolutely wonderful. Just to be able to sit down, chat with you, and dig a little deeper into The Bomber in the Basement. But yeah, I'm really happy for you that the book is finally out, and I hope everyone goes and checks it out. If you want to let them know like where they can find it, the formats and whatnot.
It's in hardcover, it's in paperback, and it's in Kindle. So you should be able to get it on Amazon.com. Or I have a few copies at my place, and we'll be having some available too for the online, sorry, for the in-person book launch. So
Call
okay,
Colleen up, send her a message.
yeah, send me a message.
Reserve
Yeah,
yourself a copy, a signed copy.
sounds great. Sounds
Yeah.
good. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. And thank you, Colleen, for doing this with me. Congratulations again. And we'll see you all soon.
Okay.
All right.